Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Joe from HallowCon. As you can tell, it's Sunday morning. We're one day, 21 hours into our broadcasting insanity. Uh, Next panel up is author Daniel Allen Butler. Uh, Again, it's morning and I'm having brain fade, so I'm just going to bring Dan in to tell us what the panel is again. You've written how to make the next. I can't remember what you said. I'm sorry. It's early. It's early on Sunday morning of a convention.
That alone gives you all the excuse you need, Joe. This panel is very simple. It's the goofs that keep indie books that keep good indie books from being great, and how indie authors can avoid them.
Okay. All right. I'm working on finishing up your scroll across the bottom that'll run with your website link and all that. So
Sure.
the people that can tune in. And also, I meant to tell y'all back during the last panel that I will start downloading about Wednesday all these the whole weekend, and I'm going to break each one up and post it to YouTube so you can have a link to share your panels.
Brilliant.
All right, but we're going to throw it over to you, and you're going to get up till about 55 minutes. Well, till about
All right, very good.
5 minutes to go.
Very
We'll be
good.
bringing questions up from the audience as they come in, or do you want us to sort of hold them until?
Well, let me make my 3 points first.
Okay.
This is Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And the prime time for sermons. All good sermons have 3 points. So let me make my 3 points and expound on them briefly first, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay. You just tell us when you're ready to start taking questions.
Okay.
All right. I'm jumping out of here, and this is author Daniel Allen Butler. Thank you for being here.
All right. Well, good morning, boils and grills, ladles and gerblemen, and those of you who are not of the human persuasion. Yes, my name is Daniel Allen Butler. Some of you may or may not recognize the name. If you don't, I'll do my best to forgive you for that. I am primarily a maritime and military author and historian, which means I write a lot of nonfiction. I just had my 11th book released officially yesterday by Casemate Publishing out of Havertown, Pennsylvania. The book is called Pearl, the 7th of December, 1941. And as you may readily surmise, it's about the attack on Pearl Harbor. It's available on Amazon. It's available ordered directly through Casemate. And I would urge you to, like you should vote early and vote often. Now, I'm getting into the fiction writing business, if you will. But I have been reading fiction for much longer than a lot of you have been alive. I've been reading on an adult level, both fiction and nonfiction, since I was 9 years old. And that was mumble years ago. I've come by all of this gray and white hair, honestly. Let's just put it that way. I have noticed that there are a significant number of authors who have come up through traditional publishing who do not take indie authors and in books that are independently published, i.e. not through traditional publishing methods and traditional publishing houses. They're not, those authors, those books aren't taken quite seriously. The sad thing is that the reason why a lot of authors and readers who read such authors feel that way is because there are some common errors that independent authors tend to fall into, usually inadvertently, but they do so to the detriment of their work. All right. Now, I'm going to cut right to the chase. I'm going to tell you right now, if you are an indie author who wants to be taken seriously, pay close attention to what I'm saying here. And by taken seriously, I'm talking about being taken not just within your own small community, but within a broader community and within the publishing world in general, both traditional and non-traditional publishing. There are a lot of authors out there who are traditionally published, who have respect for and offer support to independent authors and indie published books. But there are a lot of traditional authors who, as I say, are quite disdainful of indie authors and indie publishing in general. So if you want to start to gain some traction outside of the strictly indie world, the first thing that you should do, once you have finished your manuscript, and by finished, I mean once you've completed the first draft, or say the second draft, okay, so find yourself a damn editor. Write that down. Put asterisks on both ends of it. Underline it a couple of times. Find yourself an editor. Someone who can not only read your book for line editing, duplication of words, missing words, improperly used words, that sort of thing, but someone who can sit down and go through the book and take the time to point out where and when and how something does not work. There are too many books that are out there that have been published because someone has fancied themselves to be a writer or an author, and they have access to Create Space or some other, or whatever it's called now, and they will they'll get their book printed up and then wonder why, after an initial flurry of sales, and the among their friends and relatives and close personal enemies, that the title does not gain any traction. It does not get any attention outside of the author's immediate circle. Okay, more often than not, 3/4 of the time, this is due to either bad editing or the lack of editing, good or bad. You should always keep in mind that you have dialogue and you have narration. The two, unless the story is being told in the first person, the dialogue and the narration should not sound identical. They should be distinctive from one another. And you should have someone who has an eye for good reading and good writing, going through and highlighting and pointing out everything every time that the two overlap, where the narration sounds like dialogue and the dialogue sounds like narration. People do not speak in narrative sentences as a rule. They do not follow narrative patterns of speech. The grammar, the word choice, the structuring is very different from the exposition that is presented in narration. Have someone, preferably someone who is widely read and well read, who can spot these differences. Someone who can spot anything from a mixed metaphor to sentence fragments to run-on sentences that cannot be justified by the circumstance of the narration and or the dialogue. find a good editor and listen to the editor. Never hesitate to ask your editor, why did you blue pencil this? Figuratively speaking, nobody uses blue pencils anymore because nobody uses nobody uses hard copy anymore. However, my point is, whenever an editor suggests, or if they're a really forceful editor demands a change, never hesitate to ask why they want that change. But at the same time, listen to them as they are explaining their reasoning for suggesting the change. You'll learn from it. You'll find out why your word choice was wrong. You'll expand your vocabulary. You'll learn to sharpen your verbal pencil, so to speak. Sir Winston Churchill once made the observation that the difference between the right word and almost the right word is the difference between a rapier and a bludgeon. And he's quite correct in this. So the editing process is important. Let the editor do his or her work. Let them edit your work, but then always be willing. Don't be confrontational about it, but if you're not comfortable with the suggestion or you don't understand why, ask them to explain it and then listen to them. Now, this is a process that in old-fashioned, quote unquote, traditional publishing, authors and their editors went through all the time. It's a process that I go through every book I publish. As of yesterday, that's been 11 times, where the editor has made suggested changes in word choice or phrasing, suggested that a sentence be broken up into two or more separate individual standalone sentences, because I ran on a bit. Excuse me. And then I have the right, and sometimes the obligation, I feel, to ask them to defend their choice. Good editors will always be able to explain to you why they're making editorial suggestions. So when they do so, listen close. Then go back to your manuscript, make those editorial changes, read through it again yourself, and find a good copy reader. A beta reader, whatever, first reader, however you want to however you want to phrase it. Have them go through and simply read your story. And excuse me, my throat is drying up this morning. Beg your pardon. Clearly, I'm not smoking enough. Don't ask them to read it for as a proofreader per se. This time, you just want them to read it for its impact, its flow. Find out where it drags. Find out where the really good, exciting parts are. Find out the passages that need to be expanded, those that need to be trimmed. Your beta readers are always your friends. Now, I don't mean your friends are always your beta readers. Good beta readers will always be willing to tell you what the strengths and the weaknesses of not only your story, but its actual presentation is, what the strengths and weaknesses are in your story, in your presentation. Again, listen to them, take their advice, ask them to explain their reasoning, why they say this passage needs trimmed, this one needs expanded. And if you can find yourself in agreement with them, if you can't find a good reason to disagree with them, pay attention, make the changes. Another thing that will take, this is my second point, something that will take a reader out of a book. They may finish the novel that you've written, just because a lot of people feel like starting to read a novel morally obligates them to finish it. That's fine, but they for some reason they never pick up your second or your third or your fourth. Something happened in that first novel that took them out of the story or took them away from your writing or just left them unsatisfied. We like to pick on grammar Nazis. Grammar Nazis are fun targets. I'm guilty of doing that myself. Just, when someone gets overly pedantic, they make themselves targets of opportunity. But sometimes grammar Nazis have a point. And it's not just grammar, it's spelling and punctuation. Know the rules. Write that. Okay, this is the other one you want to write down. Know the rules. Know how to spell. Know how to structure a sentence. Know how to punctuate that sentence. A comma or a semicolon in the wrong place can completely destroy the thought, the concept, the narrative that you're trying to impart onto the reader. All right. One of the great differences between English and most European languages, for example, is the sentence structure. Okay. And of course, the classic joke, throw grandma from the train a goodbye. Or, throw grandpa from the haymow his hat. Okay. All the old Pennsylvania Dutch jokes like that. Most of European languages are structured identically, and they're structured very differently than English in terms of where verbs adjectives. Okay, know where and when and how to properly structure and properly punctuate your sentence. I had an English teacher when I was in 7th grade, which again is mumble years ago, who taught me how to diagram sentences, how to set up a sentence so that I could identify the subject and the predicate. I could identify the nouns, the verbs, when and where adverbs were attached in the predicate, when adjectives were attached in the predicate, where an adverb might be appropriate in the subject. All right. Learn this. If you don't know how to diagram a sentence, go find. There are several that are still floating about. Go find a website that will teach you how to to diagram a sentence. One of the 3 great practitioners of the English language, the other 2 being William Shakespeare and J.R.R. Tolkien, one of the 3 premier practitioners of the English language, Sir Winston Churchill, remarked that he was a failure at Latin and couldn't compose pithy Greek epigrams, and so was consigned to the class of boys who were considered intellectually slow, and there he discovered the majesty of the English sentence. And part of that discovery was learning how to diagram a sentence. Sentence structure is important. Grammar is an essential part of sentence structure. Knowing how to lay out the sentence, make it say precisely what you intend it to say, will make a huge difference in your audience's appreciation of what you're writing, they will respect you more. They will take your work more seriously, and they will have a deeper insight into what you've written because you have provided that insight for them by properly structuring your sentences. Learn your grammar, learn your spelling, learn your punctuation. The way to do that is learning to diagram sentences. That will take you out of the realm of the mediocre author who just strings words together and hopes that the reader can decipher whatever his or her meaning is from those strung together words, and turn your writing into something magical, because you will be giving the gift of not just your words, but your thoughts and your imagination properly presented to your readers. Your readership will increase, and as it does, word of mouth about you as a writer and your quality as a writer will increase at the same time. Now, as I said, these are processes that people like myself who were published back when ebooks weren't even a concept, when independent publishing was quite literally a pipe dream. It was not something that was going to become a reality. It was one of those far-fetched notions that was pie in the sky. All right. People like me who had to go through the traditional submission, rejection, more submissions, getting past the submission editor. And by the way, that's one of the secrets to getting published in mainstream publishing, is learning how to get past the submissions editor so you can really get to the decision maker, because submissions editors have one job and one job only, and that is to say no. But I digress. We've learned how to get past the submissions editor, get our manuscripts or our proposals in front of decision makers, have gone through that acceptance process, and then all of the revision and the editing, possibly multiple passes on editing until a book is acceptable to be bound and printed, which used to be quite an expensive prospect. It still ain't cheap, all right? But getting a good editor, listening to your editor, getting good first readers, listening to their critiques and criticisms and responding accordingly, learning how to diagram sentences to properly use spelling, grammar, punctuation, and sentence structure to convey our ideas exactly how we mean for them to be conveyed. So those are three key things that you want to remember if you are an indie author who is hoping to increase your readership, increase your overall appeal, expand your reader base, expand your fan base, increase your sales, and increase your stature and status within the indie publishing world. There's one more thing that I have to bring out here. This is mostly for people who are writing historical fiction, alternate history, or are writing stories that are very firmly set in established real milieus, real cities, real nations, real towns, real cultures. And that is, do your damn homework. Did you get that? Write it down, underline it, asterisks are all around it, a couple of gold stars, maybe a unicorn trotting across it. Do your homework. There was an author I will not mention her name because she has done fairly well in the romance category, which, okay, let's face it, that's kind of lightweight. All right. But my then wife was really big on this author, and she had written a novel, not my wife, the author in question. The author in question had written a novel that was set in the Great War, 1914, 1918. The opening page of this novel, which Eleanor encouraged me to read because she knew that one of my fascinations as a military historian was and continues to be the Great War. She really highly recommended this story. The first scene of the novel opened with a dogfight taking place above no man's land in October of 1918. The dogfight consisted of a duel between an Albatross D2 and a Curtiss JN4 Jenny. I got that far into the novel, never turned the page. Why? Well, because by October of 1918, there were no more Albatross D2s flying with the German Air Force. The plane was obsolete. It had been out of service for over a year. The Curtiss JN4 Jenny was a training plane, American built, never shipped overseas, was not considered fit for combat, never used in combat. In other words, the opening scene of this novel historically, and the historical setting was critical to the narrative, the overall narrative of the novel. The opening scene of the novel could have never taken place. It broke me. My suspension of disbelief was permanently removed because this particular author failed to do her homework. There are little things. Webb Griffin in the Core series and in his Brotherhood of War series is laden with historical inaccuracies and anachronisms that you just really, if you'd bothered to read a couple of encyclopedia entries, Webb, you could have gotten this bit right, but you didn't, and you blew it. So if you are going to write alternate history, historical fiction, or you are going to write fiction set in a very clearly defined real milieu, if you are writing a novel set in 2020 London, make sure you know your geography of 2020 London. Make sure you know what kind of cars people are driving. And make sure, I really do appreciate your indulgence with this coughing. I don't know the source of it. Anyway, but getting back to 2020 London as the example, make sure you know what sections of London are pedestrian only. There are no motor vehicles allowed, for example. Know the parts of London. When someone refers to the city in London, it's a very narrow geographic area of central London that corresponds to ancient to medieval London. That is basically the financial center of London. But when somebody uses the term the city, they're not referring to the city of London. They're referring to a district. They're referring to, like they were talking about Hell's Kitchen in New York, for example. Make sure that you know and you're confident of those kind of details. Because again, if you get them wrong, you take readers out of the story and you've got to work to re-engage them. You never want to have to do that. You want to get the reader hooked from the very first page and keep them going and make it feel authentic and believable. You never want them to disengage and go, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. I know better than that. They got this wrong. You never want to give the reader an opportunity to pull himself or herself out of the story, because then you have to re-engage them again entirely, and that is extraordinarily difficult to do. So, to recapitulate, and then I'm going to throw this open to questions, and please, write your questions in the comment section there, and I'll read them over, look them over, and read them off, and do my best to respond to them. But first, the most important thing above all, get yourself a good editor and listen to them. Second, get yourself good first readers, beta readers, however you want to term it, to read your story for flow, continuity, pacing, and listen to them. Third, know your spelling, your grammar, your syntax, your punctuation. Learn how to diagram sentences so you can make sure that what you think you're saying is exactly what you mean to be saying. And then, thrown in as a bonus, do your homework. Make sure that you can speak authoritatively to the subject that you are writing to. Now, if you're going to, for example, refer to, so-and-so used a bolt action rifle, and it doesn't matter for purposes of characterization or story content, whether he's using, a Lee Enfield or a Springfield 03 or a KAR 98. The exact rifle doesn't matter. Fine, you're okay leaving it. Yeah. So and so used a bolt action rifle, but if the type of rifle is material to the subject, make sure you know what kind of rifle you're talking about, and you're talking about the right one. Because people will tear you apart on those details, and you will lose your readers. So that's my recap. Let's see.
All right. First comment up is Carl Whitzman, who said amen on the editor and get a good one.
Well, thank you, Carl. I appreciate the endorsement, and I'm glad that you grok it. You understand the importance of, yes, having a good editor. I cannot. It's impossible to overvalue the worth of a good editor.
Yeah. And Carleen has typed in, raise his hand, grammar, spelling, and punctuation Nazi here. And I think,
well, Carly, you are one of those people that other authors who do not have a grammar, punctuation, and spelling Nazi to hand already. You're one of those people that those aspiring authors should become friends with, because you self-identify as one. You understand the worth of good grammar, spelling, and punctuation. So I'm on your side.
And Chris Walker just threw in a comment of great points.
Thank you, Chris.
And Ruth Jackson asked, why can't alternate history differ a little bit?
Alternate history, to be believable, Ruth, has to maintain continuity. If you're going to change history, you have to decide at which point in time the history changes. And then you have to decide what are the events or incidents that create those change, or create that change. Okay. You have to have a backstory. You have to have a backstory to that pivotal moment when the alternate history that you're writing departs from the actual history. All right. And it has to be internally and externally self-consistent. It has to be something that could have happened. All right. What if the percussion cap on John Wilkes Booth's pistol had misfired? What if in the shadows of that presidential box at Ford's Theater, his aim had been off, and he just nicked Lincoln's ear instead of putting the bullet squarely in the back of Lincoln's head? You have to be able to explain what happened. You can't just say he missed. There has to be, even if you don't explicitly state it in the narrative, you have to know yourself where the point of departure is and be able to justify it. It was not unknown, for example, it was rare. The reliability of percussion cap ignition by 1865 was amazingly high, but misfires were still possible. Shooting from darkness into a lighted area is difficult. It's not simple. So it's possible that Booth could have missed, but you need to be able to justify the change. That you can't just arbitrarily make it because, oh, this sounds good. The reason being is history is a matter of continuity. Okay, one event leads to another. People take actions based on prior experience, prior emotions, sometimes acting against prior experience or prior emotions, making conscious, deliberate decisions to do so. But it's all still, there's a continuity. You cannot simply have a superfluous or frivolous change that is going to have a profound effect on the course of history that departs from an actual historical narrative. You've got to have your backstory in place. It has to be internally self-consistent. You can make it different, but you have to know what you're doing and be able to justify it.
Okay, and next question in is, what sources do you prefer or avoid when you research a new project?
Primary documents. Primary documents are the best. Start with eyewitness accounts. Start with if any kind of forensic documentation. If you're talking, if the mechanical performance of a piece of equipment is involved, get the specific, find the best, most reliable set of specifications for that equipment that you can. If there was ever any kind of investigation into an incident, referring to the title, well, okay, my most recent book, Pearl, 7th December 1941. The starting point for any research into the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor is the collected transcripts, and I'm talking, I believe it's 23 volumes. It's like, takes up 12 cubic feet. It's that big. The transcript of the United States congressional inquiry into the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, and then you look for the citations for exhibits of other documents, foreign documents that are introduced into evidence. But always try to begin with the primary documents. Then go to secondary sources that may be able to lead you to additional primary documents. But always try and take your research as far back as close to the actual event as you can get and move forward from there. When new forensic research comes out, when new explanations and theories for events are presented, always find out what their documentation is, and see where what premises they began with and proceeded from. But try to get as much primary evidence, eyewitness, forensic, on site. If you can visit a battlefield, or if you can visit the site of an event or an incident, and you're lucky enough that it has not significantly changed over the passage of years, you can learn a lot just from walking the ground, because it becomes a firsthand experience. You get lines of sight. You get you get a feel for what the individuals could and could not see, could and could not know, and how their physical, where they were physically positioned, may have influenced their decision making. So hopefully that was helpful.
Okay, next comment up is from the freelance editor, the Rocket Mama. She says, freelance editor among the con guests here. So just letting, she does editing.
Okay, good.
That would be author Stephanie Osborne. And Carlene talking about being a grammar Nazi. She's been known to change the public signs.
Oh, one of my favorites. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the Wizard of Id, but one of my favorite Wizard of Id cartoons was Sir Rodney kneeling on the ground, laying his sword on the ground in front of a sign that said "Yield." I'll let you work it out. It'll come in a minute.
And Carl Whitsman says, we have an author friend who got a bad editor who was only interested in the point of view of her book and let so many more errors slip through. It was so bad.
Unfortunately, there can be such things as bad editors who, and they're really not editors. They're charlatans. I'll be blunt. They're a good editor will never try to materially alter the content and nature of your book, your narrative, your premise. All they will try to do is improve the manner in which your narrative, content, and premise are presented. If an editor starts to tell an author, well, I don't really think this is, you need to change this. You need to materially, substantially change your narrative because I disagree with it. Find yourself another editor. That's not their job.
All right. And Ruth Jackson says she's a grammar, spelling, and punctuation Nazi as well. I can't not stand it when I try to read a book and the person's confuses spell check for a real editor.
Okay, spell check is not your friend. Your friend is your dictionary and your thesaurus, not spell check. Okay, and you should never ever simply rely on the. I think it was Word Perfect that called its editorial, the editorial suite of features, the electronic Mrs. Bradshaw. Apparently whoever wrote that program had an English teacher at about 12 or 13 named Mrs. Bradshaw, and the name stuck with him or her. Always treat spell check as a suggestion, not an authoritative command. And always update your spell check with look up correct spellings and verify them, and then update your spell check with those correct verified spellings. But I got to admit, Ruth, I am with you 100%. Somebody who thinks that spell check is a substitute editor, really, no, they put their head in their fifth point of contact.
All right. And
anybody who went to jump school understands that one.
Yeah. The Rocket Mama goes, yay, Carly, about changing the signs. And Carleen says, I still read the Wizard of Id every day.
All right. I like this. I like Carly.
Yeah. And we've reached the end of the comments. So if anybody else has anything they want to throw in there, add in, please do. So, Dan, you're talking about the Pearl book that is available on your website.
It was just released. When I say just released, I mean Friday. It was just released, so I've not had a chance to put up a link on my website to Pearl. You can buy it from Amazon, and you can acquire it from Casemate directly if you're so inclined. Casemate is located in Habertown, Pennsylvania, and give me a minute. I'm looking up their URL right now.
Okay.
So
they're available. It's available on Amazon.
It's available on Amazon. It is available directly from Casemate. Casemate is the largest publisher in the world of military history related titles, and they have several imprints, and they are they cover literally every aspect of warfare, from from small unit tactics all the way up to grand strategy, from the ancient Egyptians to the 21st century, and every subject and period in between. They have a publisher per se, who is or not a publisher, but an imprint per se, who will specializes in some area, in some area, whether it's weapons, strategy, tactics, whatever it happens to be. Their website's very simple. It's casematepublishers.com. Casemate Publishers as one word, .com. So I've been they've been my publisher for over a decade now, and I've been very, very happy with them. So.
Okay, I'm just running some stuff in a back channel here. All right. We have no new comments.
All right. Well, I would like to thank everyone. As Ringo Starr once said, at the rooftop session for Let It Be, at the end of Get Back, said, I'd like to say thanks on behalf of the group, and I hope we pass the audition.
Well, I enjoyed having you. Long about springtime, start getting back with me about the possibility of actually having you in person at HallowCon next year.
Okay, we'll do that.
I mean, we're just up the road from you in Dalton, Georgia, if you know where Dalton is. Yeah, you don't even have to come all the way to Chattanooga.
Okay, works for me.
And and T.D. Rolfson says, yes, please, as coming to HallowCon.
Okay.
TD, if you remember in the last little group thing, we have a resident, actually got two resident authors at HallowCon. TD and KT are our resident authors. They pretty much live not far from the hotel, so they're there every year. They help us out. Chris Walker says, thank you, Dan. Carl Whitzman says, good session. And Carleen goes, thanks for the talk, Dan.
All right. Well, thank you for attending. I really enjoyed myself, and I'm looking forward to doing it in person sometime soon.
I think Blake has jumped in. Are you still with us, Blake?
Yes, sir. Just sitting down.
Okay. If you got something, Blake has been a lifesaver for HallowCon.
I missed this entire thing. I wouldn't be able to pull a question up to help anyone right now, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
I've been gone the whole session.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Dan is a historical author. Is that how you claim it?
I'm a maritime and military author and historian.
Oh, okay. So, that if that gives you any quick help. And Ruth Jackson says, yes, thanks pretty much. Because the reason I'm asking Blake to jump in here is I have to step out for a minute. Something has come up I need to take care of. But yeah, Blake, after you finish up with Mr. Butler over on the brand of HallowCon commercials, let me pull those up. We'll just do a little quick housekeeping, and I'm going to produce from the side. Need you to run the left side, but skip Rico's Nachos from Immortal Impressions all the way down to the HC merch, and then start next panel. And I should be back by then.
That works.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dan, so much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Joe.
I mean, even with the issues yesterday with the table read, you absolutely helped sell the thing. We wished you could have had a better internet connection because you were doing a wonderful job.
It was really fun.
I was enjoying myself. You have no idea how frustrating it was for me not to be able to finish the table read. But I just couldn't. I could not keep a connection.
Yeah,
that's sustained. So
yeah. Well, hey,
I was going to say I couldn't sustain a connection, but then I realized that was going to come out.
That's going to be good old Freudianism.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's technology.
I don't know what we're going to do.
It's technology, and I'm involved. Something's going to goof up.
Oh God, yeah. I should have expected. Anyway.
All right, I'll be right back, Blake.
All righty. But yeah, it was awesome having you on. I wish I would have sat in on the panel. I had some stuff to do, unfortunately. So let's see.
Oh, just like a real live convention in that case, there's always at least one panel that you want to get to that you can't because you have to be someplace else.
Yep. And which is kind of a good thing because I'm going to be able to relive it later. So that's always a good thing about online. So we're fortunate that way here at HallowCon. And for all of you out there who haven't shared the HallowCon yet, you need to you need to step up your game and share it with all your friends, families, neighbors, and pets and friends. So
and close personal enemies,
especially your enemies. Tell them how good you're doing.
Yes, exactly. Living well is the best revenge.
Yes, it is. All right. If there's no further ado, we'll have you go about the rest of your day, maybe hanging out with us, maybe not. And then I'm going to play a couple of commercials.
I'll probably be popping in and out.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. Glad to hear that. All right. And with that being said, I get to figure out how to do the commercials nowadays. So I'm going to go ahead and pull you down, good sir.
Okay.
And have yourself a good rest of your day.
Thanks.
Hey guys, it's Angel with Immortal Impressions doing the virtual thing for HallowCon2020. Y'all can visit us at For Immortal Impressions on Facebook. Send us a private message. We can handle all of your ceramic, sewing, 3D printing, masks, costumes, and all the other goodies that we have, and we'll be glad to take care of you. Y'all have a good con and a good year.